Welcome to Australian basketball history. Why don't we start with your name, where you're based, and how old you are.
My name is William Floyd Hays. I'm 61 years old, young. Born in Omaha, Nebraska, raised in Los Angeles, California.
Fantastic. And William, one of your nicknames is Butch. Is it okay if we call you Butch today?
Everyone calls me Butch, except for my mom. William is when I'm in trouble, but Butch is my name.
Cool. So Butch, we're very keen to talk to you about your earliest basketball memories, your time in the NBA, your time playing internationally, the contribution you made to the NBL, and of course your ongoing journey through Masters basketball. But we wanted to fast forward to today. It's June the 27th, 2024, and you and I are on the east coast of northern Italy in a basketball town called Pesaro, and we're playing in the 12th Fimba European MaxiBasketball Championships. With well over 2,000 players, there are 191 teams representing 28 countries. Tell us about this tournament.
Oh my gosh, the competitiveness of everyone at every age level has been incredible. And George, I'm just having a fantastic time. Some of the players that I've come across or that we've played against, I've played against 30, 40 years ago. But this has been a well put together tournament, and I'm so happy to be here.
We'll get you to call out some of the players that you're playing with. Who's on the Australian over 60s men's team with you?
Oh, of course, we've got the giant Murray Shields, and we've got the best interviewer in Australia, George Bays. You should be on one of the leading Channel 7s or NBL stations.
So Butch, tell us about how the Australian team's going up against that tough competition that you mentioned. Game one, of course, was against Lithuania.
Yes, Australia, we got out the gates really strongly. We shot We shot the ball well in the first quarter. We matched them point for point. Second quarter, they gained a bit of momentum. Different type of ball playing here in Europe. Lots of physicality, lots of screen and rolls. Probably didn't fare so well in the second quarter, and from there we just kind of lost our way. But again, it was a great game. The final score probably didn't show how close the game really was against Lithuania.
Next game, Czechoslovakia, we got up.
We got up, and in fact, probably the key was I don't think I scored a point in the second game, but as a team, I think collectively everyone scored, everyone contributed. Probably our fast play, your injection into the game, Sean, the fast breaking, that was probably the key. Just the sharing of the basketball, the good old Australian move the ball and cut was very effective against the Czechs.
And of course, we had a tough morning yesterday. We played Italia Milano, a local team, and unfortunately went down. Tell us about that game.
Again, very physical game. They shot the ball extremely well. And the thing we've got to remember too, George, is these guys have been playing together for literally 30, 35 years. So their movements and defense, they know what to expect from each other. We've only come together a few weeks ago, and I think if we had the time, if we play in the next Worlds and we stick together, we'll be just as efficient as they were.
Right. Well, in the meantime, we're heading for a rank somewhere between number 9 and 16 out of the countries that have entered. Apart from that, Butch, this experience of representing Australia means that we get to spend time with our partners. Yesterday we had a great winery tour. How's your partner Sue enjoying this championship?
Well, she's she's Italian, or half Italian, and I think she, well, and she's a great supporter of me, of course. She goes everywhere that we play basketball, but she is also showing me the country. We are up in the Republic of San Marino on one of our off days. I've been to Rome, and I've been a lot of places, but I've never really got a chance to enjoy the local foods, the local museums, and I've done so much of that. I've seen so much of this country in the past 2 weeks I've been here. It's been a great experience.
Fantastic. Why don't we go back to where it all started? What is your earliest basketball memory?
Oh gosh, my neighbor Vernell, who used to play street ball with me, saw that I had a bit of potential and said, "Hey, why don't you come try out for the West Side Blazers?" And the West Side Blazers is a pretty famous development club in Los Angeles. And sure enough, I was successful. I made the cut. Some of the legendary coaches, Glenn Marks, Dave Benezra, who's continued on with basketball. He's created his own basketball club called the West Side Rockfish, and you can Google that. They've produced so many NBA players since then. But that was kind of my start to basketball, and here I am now. And those coaches taught the fundamentals. We didn't go see professional basketball games. We went to watch high school games. We went to watch college or university games where the fundamentals were your John Woodens at UCLA, where basketball was being taught. And we would watch players, and that's how I learned the game.
So it was a very scientific approach that was built into your mindset from day one. It was about looking for those little nuances in the play, or nuances that the players would exhibit when handling the ball. That became a bit of a science for you and sort of the foundation of your approach to basketball.
Oh, for sure. My job when we'd go to watch a college game would be to see how many times that point guard would turn the ball over, or how many times he would use his left hand, or in certain spots would he bank the basketball, or would he swish it. There's just all those little things that probably some of our younger players don't. Everyone wants to shoot three-pointers now. When I played back then, there was no three-point line. So whenever you shot the ball, you had to be very efficient with it. Whenever you passed the ball, you had to be very efficient with it. And that's where I got my education.
You also got some of your basketball education on the street. Street ball was a chapter in your life that we're keen to hear a little bit about.
Oh, for sure. The street ball is where your toughness comes in. George, I could tell you a story of, and back in the day, guys wouldn't just play in their own neighborhoods. They would go to other neighborhoods. And you're playing against, it's like playing in the NBA. You're playing against Boston one day, the next day you're playing against Phoenix. So me and my mate Billy Knox, we were playing some street ball this Saturday afternoon, and we went to a court on the west side. We won our first game, and if you lose, you may not get back on the court for 2 or 3 hours. And we've won probably 8 games in a row. And finally, some guy said, "This blank is enough." And he started walking toward his bag. Guys were running and hiding under cars, running up trees. And we're like, what the heck is this guy going for? And he pulls out a gun and he points it at us and tells us to leave his park. Well, we left his park, grabbing our bags, and I think I left my ball behind. I was in that much of a hurry to get away. But that's how serious basketball was growing up in Los Angeles. And those are just great experience. When we look back, we laugh, but I may not have been here today, George. But yes, street ball was definitely a key to my, also a key to my basketball skill and my take on basketball now.
Perhaps you can take us back to your high school and college basketball ahead of your entry into the NBA.
Well, from the Westside Blazers, I was fortunate enough to be seen by lots of high schools. Was recruited by a Catholic school called St. Bernard High School, which is still a real powerhouse in Los Angeles. Played very well my 3 years in high school, got a scholarship to a great university in the Pacific 10, the Pac-10, UC Berkeley, or Cal Berkeley as it's known. Had a great college experience. Kevin Johnson was my backcourt running mate. He had a successful NBA career with the Phoenix Suns. Was then drafted by the Chicago Bulls, I think in the 6th round. You guys can Google that. Had a great rookie camp and was invited back to veterans camp. And when I get to my hotel room after they give me my bag of clothes, the great Michael Jordan is sitting in the room in the bed next to me, and we're roommates through veteran camp and the next 2 months of the NBA season. That was probably one of my greatest stories, greatest experiences. And I was only there for a couple of months and was soon released from my contract, cut from my contract. But out the door, Michael Jordan, great guy, gives me a pair of Air Nike shoes. And 40 years later, we find out that they were the prototype shoes for the Nike, Air Nike shoe, and there are only 4 shoes made, and I've got one of those 4. Maybe one of these days I'll put them out in the market, but I'm just holding on to them for now.
As you would. Apart from the shoes, did Michael Jordan gift you anything else? Was there an insight, a flash of brilliance that you saw that influenced you?
We were always the first to training, always the last to leave. And back then, Chicago wouldn't have gotten that. He was the 3rd pick, I think. They wouldn't have gotten an earlier pick if they were a better team. And probably the culture of Chicago Bulls back then, it was the old school pros that showed up to training right. Maybe they were late, smoking cigarettes, drinking, and Michael, we just changed all that. I think he brought a lot of professionalism to basketball, and of course, as we all know, winning. That's probably the biggest thing, was professionalism that he brought. And Butch, let's go shoot some shots. It's 10 o'clock at night, Michael. Well, that's all right. It's the best time to shoot. No one will be on the court. So that type of professionalism that he brought to basketball and brought to myself.
Who else surrounded you and MJ at the time, both from an administration and coaching level, but also players that you played with?
There was an old school guy, Dave Corzine. He was probably one of the professionals. He was a Chicago-born player, probably at that time had played 10 seasons in the NBA, and he was quite influential. But the other person was probably Michael's dad. He would call Michael every night. Hey, Butchie, how you doing? Are you eating right? Are you getting enough rest? You know, you can do it. But probably those 2 people Michael's dad was really, and when he died in later years, tragically, I really felt that pain that Michael did too, because he really was Michael's inspiration, and he never knew it. He was my inspiration too.
Your release from the Bulls triggered a zigzag across the globe. The Philippines, UK, France, perhaps some other stops along the way, but you ended up in Australia. Perhaps you can just take us through those sequence of events after your release.
Okay, I'll try to. There's so many. The day I was released from the Chicago Bulls, and that's a great story too, getting signed by the Bulls, and my first contract was $65,000 US back in 1984, and I thought I'd won the lottery. I mean, that was, I think school teachers back then were making $10,000, $11,000, but as it may, I was released from my contract. 2 days later, I'm on a flight to the Philippines, and I'm playing in their open contest, but 6'4" or 6'2" and under competition. And President Marcos is the owner of my team, and of course, I'm 6'4", almost 6'5", but the way things worked in the Philippines, they signed me up, and I can remember on the program, Butch Hays from California, 6 foot, that's what they labeled me as, and I got to play in this competition, and that was probably one of the better, next to Australia, one of the better places to play basketball, 30,000 people a night to a game, high scoring. They played NBA basketball, 48-minute clocks. But anyway, that was the start of my passage to playing around the world. From there was England. I played in the Birmingham Bullets. From there, I played in Dijon for a French team. Back to England for Birmingham. Then I played in Scotland for the, that was a long story too. I played in Scotland. We won the British Cup. I played against Drazen Petrovic in the European Cup. Didn't know who he was. Dropped 35 on him. But they ended up winning the European Cup that year. And from there, the CBA, I played 1 year in the CBA back in America, then Australia.
Well, tell us about the events leading up to your migration to Australia.
Was playing in England. A coach named Tom Wisman, who was coaching at the Gold Coast at the time, said, one of these days I'm going to get you to Australia. Our paths just kept crossing. Things just didn't work out. Then a guy named Don Shipway from Adelaide got into the equation. Brought me to try out with the Adelaide 36ers while they're touring America, as a lot of the teams, the early days, they would play against U.S. college teams in the off season. And the rest was history. I played with them in a few games, and I ended up signing a 2-year contract with the Adelaide 36ers.
Who was your coach? Who did you play with?
Don Shipway, Albert Leslie, a famous Olympian, was assistant coach. Mark Bradkey, Daryl Pierce, Mike Mackay, Graham Cubank, just all great guys, and of course the chairman of the board, who probably educated me more about Australian basketball and professionalism, just like Michael Jordan, Mark Davis, and I give him kudos whenever I can as another opportunity. But Mark Davis, the ultimate professional, and I think people don't realize, they think he's 6'9", 6'10". I'd say he's 6'6". One of the toughest guys I've ever played with, played against, and kudos Mark Davis and the Adelaide 36ers. Great organization, great guys. That's my Australian start.
From Adelaide 36ers, you moved to Newcastle Falcons.
No, you're getting ahead of yourself there. Wollongong, or the Illawarra Hawks, they're called now. Alan Black, who was coaching in Perth, got the head coaching job there. Brought myself and Melvin Thomas. That was another great team. Chuck Harmonson, Chris Steele, Mick Corcoran. We were kind of this Dean McDonald, this underrated team that just kept achieving. We made the playoffs those 2 seasons I was there, and I think we lost at the old Illawarra Snake Pit. I'm sure it's still standing, and I think we'd lose maybe 2 games a year there. That's how tough it was to win in Illawarra. But that was the next trip. After that, Newcastle Falcons, played several seasons there. In between there, got an offer to play in Korea. And I've got 2 kids at the time, and wherever I go, they went. And that was funny when we were leaving, George, when we were leaving the stadium yesterday. There's some player from the Korean side, Lee Min-woo, who I remember. He played for another team. He goes, Butch Hays, Nare Bluebirds. And gosh, that was 25 years ago. So basketball is just this big fraternity. And sometimes, George, we don't know how big the fraternity is. He goes and he doesn't speak that great of English, but we're communicating, talking about games in the past. But from Korea back to North Melbourne Giants. Again, I'm playing with Daryl Pierce, and probably one of the best point guards that I think that have graced the shores of Australia was Daryl McDonald. He's the ultimate street baller. The skills of, I just think he should have been and stayed in the NBA. Daryl McDonald, he's my idol. Kudos to you, Daryl. But you're who I wanted to play like in Australia. But from North Melbourne Giants back to Newcastle, and that was it for me.
When you look back over the professional part of your career, best player that you played against?
Well, it'd have to be Jordan, or we're talking internationally?
Either US, international, or Australia.
And there's so many. I don't think we talk enough about Leroy Loggins. Leapin, kudos. So many times where in Australia where I've sealed the game is over, seconds on the clock, Leroy gets the ball, hits some incredible shot, game over, we lose. Leroy Loggins, kudos to you. Michael Jordan, Scott Fisher, Perth, Ricky Grace at Perth, and Andrew Gaze, who's probably our best Australian player. Coming in, everyone's telling me about Andrew Gaze. He's this guy. He might walk a little funny. He might look a bit awkward. Give him his kudos. And I didn't. I remember the first time playing against him. I'm D'ing him up, backdoor cut, and he's not that fast. He's not that, I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of players that'll be agreeing with me. He's not that. But at the end of the game, he's got 38 points, shooting 60%. He's 6'8". He's a point guard. You can't steal it off him. But Andrew Gaze, man, you know how I feel about you. Kudos.
One of the players that would agree with you is Darren Lucas, who we caught up with recently, who was affectionately known as the Gaze stopper.
Yeah. They had some incredible games. I'd love to see those stats, though. Yeah. Andrew, he's our leading scorer. Well, Darren, you can tell me what you think later. But Gazy's tough to stop.
Best coach?
I've had so many. I throw Don Shipway in there in Australia. Tom Wiseman, who I briefly in Newcastle. But probably my development coaches. I mentioned Dave Benesra, Glenn Marks, and there was a guy named Joe Dunn who probably brought through half of South Central L.A. Players. He lived in the Valley in L.A., which is probably 40-50 minutes away from L.A. He would get in his car or his van, he'd drive in, pick us all up, take us to training, and he was just this awesome coach that believed in our abilities, believed in our skills, taught us toughness. But probably those development coaches growing up.
Greatest of all time for you, I expect that you'll say Jordan.
Oh, without a doubt. Even before, and you know what, George, I don't think he knew. He can say now, yeah, I believed, and I don't think he knew. But he was just this guy that, like you and I, just loved basketball and loved to achieve. They compare him to, or Kobe to him. Jordan just had that mindset. And when I watched the documentary of The Last Dance, I think it was great. And for those here in Australia that have won, the Perth teams, Mike Ellis, I forgot to include Mike, who was also one of my favorite players in Australia. Those Perth teams that won, they challenged each other. They, like Jordan did, they challenged one another. They trusted one another. They probably didn't like each other at times because they all wanted to win. So Jordan, when I see the documentaries, when I think of guys that shaped me, Michael Jordan's a guy.
Shout out to Mike Ellis, who of course is our coach over here in Pesaro. That probably takes us back to Masters basketball. When did you first get involved with Masters basketball?
Probably 10 years ago. Locally, I played in Masters in Newcastle, the Central Coast, Gold Coast. What's our team? Not Myths and Legends, but George, what's the team in Sydney?
That'd be Megabucks.
Megabucks, of course, with Wayne and the guys. And we put a team together in the Masters in Sydney, which we lost to the U.S. in the gold medal game. But Masters basketball is just fantastic. To be able to be in your late 30s or 40s or 50s, 60s, and to play competitive basketball against people from all over the world. I mean, how many teams did you say are here in Italy? How many players?
191 teams, over 2,000 players. It's fantastic.
How brilliant is that? Yeah. And some of these teams that we'd seen in Argentina or other places in the world, to come back and be sitting in a bar and some guy that can barely pronounce your name buy you a beer and say, Butch Hays, yeah, you made 10 points against me in Argentina. That's just amazing. And the business contacts, some of these people are, you know, very successful business people now that love basketball and can send you in the right direction. But masters basketball, and if I knew where it would go, I would have started a long time ago.
You mentioned business. What do you do when you're not playing basketball?
That's a great question. Well, got my degree from a great school, Cal Berkeley. Got my master's degree, a business degree, at University of South Australia when I was playing basketball in Adelaide. And I started a disability service called SNAP programs, Special Needs Accommodation Placements. We've been running for about, this is a shameless plug, for about 14 years. And we look after lots of accommodation, camps. We look after a lot of disadvantaged and disabled people in New South Wales.
Yeah, great.
And we run camps. We have sporting programs. I've got a basketball program that we're running out of the mission in Karua, Indigenous people, men and women. We've been running there for about 5 years. We play in local competitions. We've got probably 4 championships out of that, and we're doing some good things out of that community. So I'm really proud to promote it here. Thanks for the opportunity. But yes, SNAP programs.
Looking forward, how long do you intend to keep playing basketball and keep working? What's the plan?
Well, as long as I can breathe. I think Murray and the guys would like to be playing when we're in our 80s. And as you know, the Myths and Legends, Megabucks, there are a few teams that are playing in their 80s. So why not? I love to play and I call it giving back. There's Murray in the corner there, making a face. Thank you, Murray. I'd like to play as long as my legs will let me.
Yeah. Great. Well, I know you've got another commitment and a big week ahead of you with a few more games to go. Butch, I wanted to say thank you for your contribution to basketball. It's been wonderful to have played on the same team as you over here at this championships in Europe. Our first attendance at this championship. I'm sure you're working towards Pan Pacs and hopefully Switzerland next year, and hopefully we'll get the chance to catch up with you there again.
For sure, and hopefully George will, Switzerland 2025. Hopefully we'll keep playing together.
Absolutely. Butch, thanks so much for your time today. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, George.
Play hard.